Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the medical scanner tighter as another explosion rocked the research station. Red emergency lights bathed the corridor in an eerie glow while the station's AI announced evacuation protocols in 3 different languages. She should have been running toward the escape pods like everyone else, but something had drawn her deeper into the abandoned xenobiology wing. The distress signal had been weak, almost missed among the chaos of the pirate attack. Most would have dismissed it as equipment malfunction, but Elena recognized the pattern. It was a universal SOS, transmitted on frequencies so ancient that only scholars and archaeologists bothered to learn them anymore. She rounded another corner, stepping over fallen debris from the ceiling. The station groaned around her, its superstructure compromised by the raiders' plasma cannons. Through the reinforced windows, she could see their ships circling like vultures, waiting to strip anything valuable from the wreckage. The signal grew stronger as she approached Laboratory 7. Elena paused at the blast doors, her hand hovering over the manual release. Beyond this point, she would be committed. The evacuation ships would leave without her if she delayed much longer. Another pulse of the distress signal made her decision. She slammed the release button and squeezed through the partially opened door. The laboratory was in ruins. Containment units lay shattered across the floor, their contents either escaped or dead. Emergency power flickered, casting dancing shadows across overturned equipment and scattered research notes. But in the far corner, one containment unit remained intact, its blue glow pulsing weakly in rhythm with the distress signal. Elena approached carefully. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see a small figure huddled in the corner of the cell. It was roughly humanoid but clearly alien, with pale, almost translucent skin and delicate features that seemed too fragile for this harsh galaxy. Whatever it was, it couldn't have been more than a meter tall, curled up like a frightened child. The creature looked up as her shadow fell across the containment unit. Its eyes were large and opalescent, reflecting the emergency lights like precious gems. When their gazes met, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in years of deep space exploration, a profound sense of recognition, as if she was looking at something achingly familiar yet impossibly alien. The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Structural supports somewhere in the facility were giving way. Elena ran her scanner over the containment unit's control panel, trying to understand the research team's setup. The readings made her stomach turn. The creature had been here for months, possibly longer. The research log spoke of unprecedented psychic potential and neural adaptation studies. They had been experimenting on it, treating it like a laboratory animal rather than a sentient being. Worse, the unit's life support was failing. The creature had maybe an hour before the atmospheric mixture became toxic. Elena's fingers flew over the control interface, but the system was locked down with military-grade encryption. She cursed under her breath and pulled out her emergency toolkit. She had perhaps 20 minutes before the last evacuation ship departed, and who knew how long before the pirates decided to board the station and claim whatever they could find. The containment unit's locks were surprisingly complex for what appeared to be a simple holding cell. Elena worked methodically, rerouting power conduits and bypassing security protocols while the station continued to deteriorate around her. Each minute that passed made her escape less likely, but she couldn't abandon the creature to die alone in this metal tomb. Finally, the locks disengaged with a soft hiss. The transparent barrier slid open and the creature looked up at her with those impossible eyes. It didn't try to flee or attack. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, studying her with an intelligence that made Elena's breath catch. When she extended her hand, the creature hesitated for only a moment before placing its own delicate fingers against her palm. The contact sent a jolt through Elena's nervous system, not painful but startling in its intensity. For just an instant, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude mixed with something that might have been hope. The creature was lighter than she expected, barely weighing more than a large child. Its skin was warm but had an odd, almost metallic quality that made her scanner readings fluctuate wildly. Whatever this being was, it didn't match any known species in the galactic databases. Elena activated her emergency beacon as she carried the creature through the deteriorating station. Her escape pod was 3 levels down and half a kilometer away through corridors that might collapse at any moment. The station's structural integrity was failing rapidly, and the pirates were beginning to move closer to the hull. They made it to the first checkpoint when the creature suddenly tensed in her arms. Its eyes widened and it made a sound, not quite a cry, but something between a whistle and a harmonic tone. Elena felt the hairs on her arms stand up as the air itself seemed to vibrate. Behind them, a section of the corridor suddenly erupted in flames as a pirate boarding torpedo punched through the outer hull. The raiders had decided not to wait for the station to be fully evacuated. Elena ran faster, the creature clinging to her with surprising strength. The escape pod bay was in chaos when they arrived. The last few evacuation ships were sealing their hatches, preparing for immediate departure. Elena's own pod sat in the corner, its systems already prepped for emergency launch. She strapped the creature into the passenger seat and began the rapid departure sequence. As her pod ejected from the dying station, Elena caught a glimpse of the pirate ships in her rear display. They were moving with unusual urgency, almost as if they were fleeing something rather than simply withdrawing from their successful raid. She frowned but focused on plotting a course to the nearest inhabited system. It wasn't until they were safely in hyperspace that Elena realized the creature was no longer making the distress signal. Instead, it was producing a different sound, a complex melody that seemed to resonate through the pod's hull. Her instruments registered energy patterns unlike anything in her 15 years of space exploration. The creature looked at her with those opalescent eyes and made a gesture toward the rear of the pod, where the research station had been. Elena checked her sensors and felt her blood run cold. The entire facility was gone, not destroyed, but simply absent from space-time, as if it had never existed. Whatever she had saved was far more than it appeared to be. Elena spent 3 days trying to contact anyone who might know what she had rescued. The creature, she had started thinking of it as ash due to its pale, silvery appearance, remained calm but watchful during the journey to Haven Station. It seemed to understand that she was trying to help, though communication remained limited to gestures and those strange, melodic tones. Haven Station orbited a backwater world in the Outer Rim, far from the major trade routes and political centers. It was exactly the kind of place where someone could ask questions without attracting unwanted attention. The station's mix of researchers, traders, and refugees made it perfect for Elena's needs. Dr. Sarah Chen had been Elena's xenobiology instructor at the academy, back when Elena still believed that peaceful first contact was humanity's greatest calling. Now in her 70s, Chen ran a small but well-respected research facility on Haven Station, studying the galaxy's more unusual life forms. Elena, Chen embraced her former student warmly as they met in the station's central hub. I got your message, though I have to admit it raised more questions than it answered. You said you found something unusual? Elena glanced around the busy promenade. We need to talk privately. What I found? It's not like anything in the databases. Chen's laboratory was cluttered but organized, filled with specimen containers and analysis equipment that had seen better decades. Elena had left Ash in her ship, uncertain how the creature would react to strangers. Now she wondered if she should have brought him along. I need you to look at some bioscans, Elena began, activating her datapad. But first, I need your word that this stays between us until we understand what we're dealing with. Chen raised an eyebrow but nodded. You have it. Now show me what has you so concerned. Elena transmitted the scans she had taken during the journey. Chen's expression shifted from curiosity to confusion, and then to something approaching awe as she studied the data. These readings can't be accurate, Chen murmured, running the scans through her own analysis programs. The cellular structure is unlike anything I've seen. The neural activity patterns suggest incredible complexity, but the organism's size should make that impossible. And these energy readings? They're all confirmed, Elena interrupted. I ran every test I could think of. Dr. Chen, I think this being might be telepathic or possibly psionic. During our escape, I felt something when we made physical contact. And the research notes from the station mentioned psychic potential. Chen leaned back in her chair, her face grave. Elena, where exactly did you find this creature? These aren't the kind of readings you get from a random discovery. Elena told her about the research station, the experiments, and the strange disappearance of the facility after their escape. Chen listened without interruption, but her expression grew increasingly troubled. You need to bring this being here immediately, Chen said finally. If what you're describing is accurate, we may be dealing with something far more significant than either of us realizes. They returned to Elena's ship together. But as they approached the docking bay, they found it surrounded by station security. Elena's heart sank as she recognized the uniforms. Galactic Council enforcement. The kind of people who asked questions first and shot later if they didn't like the answers. Captain Vasquez? A tall, stern-faced officer stepped forward. I'm Commander Torres, GCE. We need to discuss your recent activities in the Kepler sector. Elena kept her expression neutral. I filed all the appropriate reports regarding the pirate attack on Research Station Omega-7. Is there a problem? Several problems, actually. Torres gestured toward her ship. Firstly, you failed to report the presence of an unregistered alien life form aboard your vessel. Secondly, you've been asking questions about xenobiological research that has attracted some very powerful attention. And thirdly, he paused, studying her face. Research Station Omega-7 never existed. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. That's impossible. I was there. I have sensor logs, rescue recordings, which all show you conducting a routine survey of empty space in the Kepler sector. Torres interrupted. There's no record of any research station, no distress calls, no pirate activity. According to every official database, you spent 3 days alone in your ship before heading here. Dr. Chen stepped forward. Commander, I can vouch for Captain Vasquez's integrity. If she says she rescued someone, Dr. Chen, with respect, we're not questioning the captain's integrity. We're questioning her sanity. Torres's voice softened slightly. Captain, prolonged deep space missions can have psychological effects. False memories, hallucinations. I'm not hallucinating. Elena's voice was steady, but her mind raced. How could an entire research station simply vanish from all records? Commander, I have someone aboard my ship. A rescued alien life form. You can verify that much. Torres exchanged glances with his team. We'd like to see this alleged life form. They entered Elena's ship together, but her blood turned to ice when they reached the passenger compartment. It was empty. Ash was gone, with no sign that anyone had ever been there. Even the safety harnesses showed no indication of use. Captain, Torres said gently, I think you need to consider the possibility that the stress of recent events has affected your judgment. The Council has excellent psychological support services. No. Elena's voice was flat. I know what I experienced, but doubt was creeping in. The evidence was overwhelming, and yet she could still feel the memory of Ash's delicate fingers against her palm, still hear those haunting melodies. Had she really imagined it all? Dr. Chen touched her arm. Elena, perhaps we should... The lights went out. In the darkness, Elena heard it again, that complex melody, those harmonic tones that seemed to resonate in her bones. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light, and there was Ash, standing in the center of the compartment as if he had materialized from thin air. The GCE officers reached for their weapons, but Ash simply looked at them with those opalescent eyes. The weapons wouldn't activate. The electronic systems throughout the ship hummed and sparked as energy patterns beyond current understanding flowed through the circuitry. When Ash turned to Elena, she felt that connection again, stronger this time, but now she understood what she was feeling. It wasn't just gratitude or hope. It was recognition. This being knew her, had been searching for her, and somehow their meeting on the research station had been orchestrated. Commander Torres stumbled backward, his tactical scanner registering energy readings that shouldn't exist. What? What is that thing? Dr. Chen was already running her portable scanners, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. Incredible! The energy patterns are unlike anything in our physics models. Elena, this being isn't just psychic. It's manipulating fundamental forces at the quantum level. Ash approached Elena slowly, one delicate hand extended. When she took it, images flooded her mind, not words, but pure concept and emotion. She saw vast ships moving between stars, worlds beyond counting and creatures of impossible beauty and power. She saw herself, but older, standing among beings that could reshape reality with thought alone. And she understood finally what Ash was trying to tell her. He wasn't just some random alien she had rescued. He was something far more important, something whose existence would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. He was a dragon heir, one of the ancient lineage that ruled the space between dimensions, and she was meant to be his guide into this reality. The GCE officers never reported what they saw aboard Elena's ship. Commander Torres and his team departed Haven Station within hours, their memories somehow edited to show a routine inspection that found nothing unusual. Elena suspected Ash's influence, though the young dragon heir seemed as surprised by his abilities as everyone else. Dr. Chen had sealed her laboratory and installed privacy shields that would prevent any scanning or surveillance. For the past week, she had been running every test she could devise on Ash with the creature's patient cooperation. The results defied everything humanity thought it knew about physics and biology. His cellular structure exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously, Chen explained, as she showed Elena the latest scans. That's why our instruments give such strange readings. We're only detecting the three-dimensional aspects of his biology. The rest exists in spaces our science doesn't have names for yet. Elena watched Ash through the observation window. He was sitting cross-legged on the examination table, eyes closed, apparently meditating. Around him, small objects floated in complex patterns. Not telekinesis as humans understood it, but something far more fundamental. He was manipulating the basic forces that held reality together. The energy signatures match theoretical models for dimensional manipulation. Chen continued. If these readings are accurate, Ash doesn't just exist in our universe. He's connected to other places, other realities where the laws of physics operate differently. Elena felt a chill. Dr. Chen, what exactly are we dealing with here? Before Chen could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Elena's communicator crackled to life with the voice of Haven Station's traffic controller. All vessels, we have multiple unidentified contacts approaching from hyperspace. Repeat, unknown vessels inbound. Through the laboratory's viewport, Elena could see ships materializing from the twisted space-time of hyperspace transit. But these weren't like any vessels in the galactic databases. They moved with fluid grace, their hulls seeming to shift between solid matter and pure energy. Some appeared to be constructed from crystalline materials that bent light around them in impossible ways. Dragon ships, Elena whispered, recognizing them from the images Ash had shared with her mind. They've come for him. Ash opened his eyes and turned toward the window, his expression unreadable. The floating objects around him settled gently to the examination table as his concentration shifted to the approaching fleet. When he looked at Elena, she felt a complex mix of emotions through their mental connection: anticipation, fear, and something that might have been sadness. Dr. Chen was recording everything, her scientific excitement warring with very reasonable concern for their safety. Elena, how many of them are there? Elena counted the ships as they took positions around Haven Station. 12 major vessels, at least twice that many smaller craft. They're not moving aggressively, but... She paused as the station's communication systems activated. A voice filled the laboratory, speaking in tones that seemed to harmonize with reality itself. The words were in no human language, but somehow Elena understood their meaning perfectly. It was as if the concepts were being transmitted directly into her consciousness. We seek the lost child of our line. Return him to us, and your people will not be harmed. Haven Station's administrator responded nervously over the general communication channel. Unknown vessels, please identify yourselves and state your intentions. You are in violation of Galactic Council space. The harmonic voice replied with what might have been amusement. Your councils and laws do not apply to us, small ones. We are the draconic houses, the rulers of the spaces between realities. We have come to reclaim what was stolen from us. Elena felt Ash tense beside her. Through their connection, she sensed his conflict. Part of him wanted to return to his people, but another part, the part that had learned to trust her during their escape from the research station, was reluctant to leave. They're his family, Elena said quietly. We can't keep him from them. But Ash moved to the window and placed one delicate hand against the transparent aluminum. The dragon ships suddenly stopped their advance, holding their positions in a perfect sphere around the station. Through the mental link, Elena felt Ash communicating with them in ways that transcended language. Dr. Chen's instruments registered massive energy fluctuations as the conversation continued. Elena, whatever they're discussing, it's causing quantum disturbances throughout local space. If this continues, it could destabilize the entire system. Elena moved to stand beside Ash, placing her hand on his shoulder. What's wrong? Why aren't you going home with them? The young dragon heir turned to her, and the sadness in his opalescent eyes was unmistakable. Through their link, she felt the full weight of his situation. He had been more than just captured by the research station. He had been exiled from his people for reasons that human concepts couldn't adequately express. His return wasn't a joyful reunion. It was a trial that would determine his fate. The harmonic voice spoke again, but this time it seemed to be addressing Elena directly. "Human who saved our lost child, you have earned the right to speak. Will you surrender him willingly, or must we take what is ours by force?" Elena's throat went dry. Around the station, she could see weapon systems on the dragon ships beginning to charge. The energy signatures were unlike anything in human military doctrine, not plasma cannons or particle beams, but something that seemed to threaten reality itself. "I want to speak with you," Elena announced, hoping her voice carried to their communication systems. Face to face, the response came immediately. "You dare to make demands of the draconic houses?" "I make no demands," Elena replied. "I ask for understanding. This child, Ash, he's more than just lost property. He's a person with his own thoughts and feelings. Shouldn't he have a voice in his own fate?" Silence stretched for long minutes. Dr. Chen monitored her instruments nervously as space-time continued to fluctuate around the station. Finally, the harmonic voice returned, but now it carried notes of curiosity rather than authority. "You name him? You treat him as equal?" Elena felt Ash's hand slip into hers, his delicate fingers surprisingly strong. "I treat him as a friend." More silence, then the dragon ships began to move again. But instead of attacking, they were forming a different pattern, a ceremonial arrangement that Elena somehow recognized from the images Ash had shared with her. "Human called Elena Vasquez," the voice said. "You will come to our lead vessel. You will speak for the lost child in the ancient manner, as humans once spoke for dragons in the early days of your species." Dr. Chen grabbed Elena's arm. "You can't be serious about going over there. We have no idea what they're capable of." But Elena was already understanding what was happening. Through her connection with Ash, she was beginning to grasp the true scope of the situation. The dragons weren't just an alien species. They were the beings who had guided humanity's evolution from the shadows, the source of every myth and legend about supernatural creatures that had shaped human culture. And now, for the first time in millennia, a human had earned the right to stand as advocate for one of their own. Ash squeezed her hand and looked up at her with those impossible eyes. Through their mental link, she felt his trust and his hope. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't abandon him now. "Dr. Chen," Elena said softly, "I need you to record everything that happens. If this goes badly, humanity needs to know what we're really dealing with." The dragon ships were waiting, and Elena's fate was about to become intertwined with powers that existed beyond human understanding. The dragon vessel that came to collect Elena defied every principle of spacecraft design she had ever learned. It didn't dock with Haven Station so much as merge with it, the crystalline hull flowing like liquid until a seamless tunnel connected the two structures. Elena walked through the passage with Ash at her side, feeling the ship's living walls pulse gently around them. Inside the dragon vessel, reality operated by different rules. Corridors stretched in directions that shouldn't exist, and Elena found herself walking on surfaces that felt solid despite being transparent. The air itself seemed alive, responding to her breathing and adjusting its composition to match her physiology perfectly. "Don't try to understand it with human logic," Ash communicated through their mental link. "Their technology is grown, not built. These ships are alive in ways your language cannot express." Elena nodded, though the explanation didn't make the experience less disorienting. They followed glowing pathways through chambers that existed in more than 3 dimensions, past pools of liquid light and structures that sang in harmonies she felt rather than heard. The council chamber was vast, its boundaries lost in swirling mists that shifted between colors that had no names. 12 figures waited in a circle, each one unique in appearance but sharing the same otherworldly presence that marked them as dragons. Some appeared almost humanoid, while others had forms that challenged perception itself. One seemed to be made entirely of crystallized starlight, while another flickered between solid matter and pure energy. At the center of the circle stood the largest dragon, its form shifting constantly between a towering humanoid shape and something that reminded Elena of ancient Earth legends. Wings that spanned impossible distances, scales that reflected entire galaxies, and eyes that held the wisdom of eons. "Human advocate," the great dragon spoke, its voice carrying harmonics that made Elena's bones resonate. You stand before the circle of houses, the eldest children of creation. You would speak for one who has violated the ancient laws. Elena felt Ash tense beside her. Through their connection, she sensed the weight of history pressing down on this moment. The young dragon heir was more than just another member of his species. He was connected to events that stretched back to the earliest days of galactic civilization. "Before I speak," Elena said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice, "I need to understand what he is accused of." The dragon of crystallized starlight responded, its form shimmering as it communicated. "The one you name Ash is Kethmorphin, heir to the House of Eternal Flame. He stands accused of the greatest crime possible among our kind, attempting to permanently merge his consciousness with lesser beings." Elena felt confusion through her link with Ash. "Lesser beings? Humans?" Another dragon clarified, its form wreathed in what looked like controlled lightning. "Your species and others like it." The young one sought to abandon his nature to become something diminished. The accusation hit Elena like a physical blow. She looked at Ash, seeing new depths of pain in his opalescent eyes. Through their mental connection, she began to understand the full scope of his crime in dragon society. "He didn't want to rule over us," Elena said slowly. "He wanted to live among us, as equals." The great dragon's form shifted, showing what might have been amusement. "You begin to comprehend. For countless eons, we have guided the development of younger species, shepherding them toward greater understanding. It is our nature, our purpose. But Kethmorphin sought to abandon this sacred duty." Elena felt anger rising within her. "So you punish him for wanting friendship instead of dominance?" "We do not punish," the lightning-wreathed dragon replied. "We seek to understand. The young one's desires are unprecedented. In all our history, no dragon has ever chosen to diminish their existence for the sake of connection with lesser consciousness." "We're not lesser," Elena's voice echoed through the chamber, surprising even herself with its intensity. "Maybe we're different, maybe we don't have your powers or your understanding of reality, but that doesn't make us lesser." Silence fell over the circle. Elena could feel the weight of ancient minds considering her words, measuring them against millennia of established belief. Through her connection with Ash, she sensed his amazement. No one had ever challenged the dragon's fundamental assumptions about their place in the universe. The dragon of crystallized starlight spoke again. "You claim equality between our species, yet your kind lives for mere decades while we span centuries. Your consciousness operates in 3 dimensions while ours encompasses 7. Your technology is crude metal and circuits while ours shapes reality itself. How can you claim equivalence?" Elena thought of Dr. Chen, working tirelessly to understand the universe despite the limitations of human perception. She thought of the researchers who had died defending their station, of the pirates who had attacked it, of all the flawed, struggling, magnificent humans she had known. "Because we try," she said simply. "Because we keep trying even when we know we'll fail. Because we choose to be better than we are, even knowing we'll never be perfect. That's not lesser, that's brave." One of the dragons Elena hadn't heard from yet began to speak, its form seeming to be composed of flowing liquid metal. "The human makes an interesting argument. Perhaps there is value in struggle itself, in the choice to persist despite limitation." The great dragon's attention focused on Elena with an intensity that made her feel like she was being examined at the molecular level. "You would advocate for principles unknown to us. Tell us, human, what punishment would you choose for one who abandons duty for desire?" Elena felt the trap in the question. Whatever answer she gave would reveal her own understanding of justice, her own species' approach to morality. She looked at Ash, seeing the hope and fear warring in his expression. "I wouldn't punish him at all," she said finally. "I'd try to understand why duty felt like a prison to him. I'd ask what we could learn from his choice, and how we might grow from it." The circle erupted in harmonics that Elena felt rather than heard, dragons communicating in frequencies and concepts that bypassed human language entirely. Through her connection with Ash, she caught fragments of their debate. They were discussing concepts that had no human equivalent, arguing about the nature of consciousness and the value of limitation. Finally, the great dragon spoke again. "Your words reveal wisdom we had not considered, perhaps. Perhaps there is merit in experiencing existence from a position of limitation, but such choice cannot be made lightly. The young one must prove that his desire is genuine, not mere rebellion. Elena felt hope beginning to build in her chest. What kind of proof? He must live as a human for one full cycle of your homeworld's year, the lightning-wreathed dragon announced. No use of his true abilities, no contact with his people. He must survive and thrive using only human knowledge and human strength. Through their mental link, Elena felt Ash's terror. To a being accustomed to manipulating reality itself, the prospect of existing within human limitations was almost unimaginable. And if he succeeds? Elena asked. The great dragon's form shifted in what might have been a smile. Then he will have proven that there is value in what you call bravery. And perhaps some among us will seek to understand this human concept of choosing struggle over ease. Elena looked at Ash, seeing the determination beginning to replace fear in his eyes. The young dragon heir was ready to abandon everything he had ever known for the chance to truly understand the beings he had chosen to protect. But Elena suspected that the trial would change. More than just Ash's fate. For the first time in eons, the dragons were questioning their own assumptions about what it meant to be truly alive. The transformation was more traumatic than Elena had expected. She watched through the observation window of Dr. Chen's laboratory as Ash underwent the process that would seal away his true nature for a full Earth year. The dragons had been thorough, too thorough perhaps. They hadn't just limited his abilities, they had locked away the very essence of what made him a dragon heir. What emerged from the crystalline cocoon that had engulfed him looked human enough to pass casual inspection, though his opalescent eyes remained unchanged. But Elena could see the confusion and fear in his expression as he tried to activate abilities that were no longer there. For the first time since she had found him, their mental connection was completely severed. The neural pathways are completely human now, Dr. Chen reported, studying her scanner readings. Whatever they did, they've restructured his consciousness to operate within standard human parameters. He's essentially become what he wished to experience. Elena entered the laboratory slowly, watching as Ash, now truly more human than dragon, struggled to maintain his balance without the unconscious reality manipulation that had been his birthright. When he saw her, relief flooded his face. "Elena," he said, and his voice was different now, purely human vocal cords producing sounds shaped by human limitations. I can't feel the spaces between. Everything is so small." She helped him to a chair, noting how solid and limited his movements had become. "It's temporary, remember? 1 year, and then you can return to your people if you choose." But even as she said it, Elena wondered if that was true. The transformation seemed so complete that she wasn't sure the process could be reversed. And from Ash's expression, she suspected he was having the same doubts. Dr. Chen approached with a portable medical scanner. "We need to establish new baseline readings for your physiology. The dragons were quite thorough. You're registering as completely human on all our instruments." Over the following weeks, Elena watched Ash struggle with limitations he had never experienced. Simple tasks like opening containers or operating basic technology became challenges when you couldn't unconsciously manipulate matter at the molecular level. Food tasted strange when your senses were reduced to human standards, and sleep was necessary when your consciousness could no longer sustain itself through dimensional energy absorption. But there were discoveries too. Elena found Ash standing before a viewport one morning, tears streaming down his face as he watched Haven Station's sunrise. When she asked what was wrong, he turned to her with wonder in his eyes. "I never understood how beautiful something could be when you know it will end," he said softly. "Dragons see beauty in eternal things and patterns that persist across cosmic ages. But this is precious because it's brief." Elena began teaching him practical skills: how to prepare food, how to maintain living spaces, how to interact with humans who didn't know his true nature. She was surprised by how quickly he adapted, his enhanced intelligence still functioning even within human constraints. They took jobs aboard a freight hauler traveling the outer trade routes, Elena as navigator and Ash as a general laborer. The work was hard and the pay was poor, but it gave them anonymity and time to explore what it meant to be human without the weight of either human or dragon expectations. Captain Morrison was a gruff old spacer who asked few questions and expected hard work in return for passage and wages. He assigned Ash to the cargo bays, where the former Dragon Heir learned the value of manual labor and the satisfaction that came from physical accomplishment. "You're stronger than you look, kid," Morrison told Ash after watching him wrestle a particularly stubborn cargo container into position. "Got good instincts, too. Ever think about making this a career?" Elena saw Ash consider the question seriously. In Dragon society, such menial labor would have been beneath notice, handled by automated systems or lesser species. But here, among humans, it was honest work that earned respect and camaraderie. The real test came during their 3rd month aboard Morrison's ship. Pirates attacked the convoy they were traveling with, and Elena found herself in the familiar position of being outgunned and outmaneuvered by raiders who saw merchant vessels as easy prey. The Dragon Ash would have ended the threat with a thought, manipulating reality to remove the attackers from existence. But the human Ash had only his wits, his courage, and whatever tools were available. Elena watched from the bridge as he organized the other crew members, turning the cargo bay into a fortress using shipping containers and emergency equipment. When the pirates boarded, they found themselves facing not helpless merchants but determined fighters led by someone who understood strategy at levels that transcended human military training. "How did you know they would breach the cargo bay?" Morrison asked after the raiders had been repelled. "You positioned everyone perfectly." Ash looked thoughtful. "I've studied conflict from an academic perspective. I understood their tactical requirements. It was a half-truth, but it revealed something important. Even limited to human capabilities, Ash retained the strategic understanding of a being who had observed countless civilizations rise and fall. Combined with human determination and courage, that knowledge made him formidable in ways that pure power could not. The incident marked a turning point. Word spread through the outer trade routes about the merchant crew that had fought off an entire pirate squadron. Job offers began coming in, not for cargo handlers but for security consultants and tactical advisors. Elena found herself managing a small but growing business as Ash's reputation developed. More importantly, she watched him discover aspects of humanity that dragons had never understood. The bonds formed through shared struggle, the satisfaction of protecting others weaker than yourself, the joy found in simple pleasures shared with friends. "I think I'm beginning to understand what you meant about humans not being lesser," Ash told her one evening as they sat in a small cantina on Frontier Station, surrounded by traders and travelers from a dozen different species. "You achieve things that should be impossible given your limitations. Not through power, but through, what's the word? Stubborn determination?" Elena suggested with a smile. "Hope," Ash said quietly. "You hope for things that reason says you cannot achieve. And then you achieve them anyway through pure refusal to accept defeat." Elena followed his gaze across the cantina, where a human family was sharing dinner with a group of alien refugees, bridging cultural gaps through nothing more than kindness and patience. It was a scene that played out countless times across the galaxy, humans building connections where none should exist. "Your people shaped our evolution," Elena said, "but maybe we've become something you didn't expect." Ash nodded slowly. "Something we didn't know was possible, and now I have to decide whether to return to what I was or stay as what I've become." Elena felt a chill as she realized the true weight of the choice facing him. The dragons had given him a year to prove his commitment to understanding humanity. But they hadn't considered that the experience might change him so fundamentally that he could no longer return to what he had been. In 6 months, the trial would end, and Ash would have to choose between 2 completely different forms of existence. But Elena was beginning to suspect that the choice might no longer be his to make. 8 months into Ash's trial, everything changed. Elena was reviewing navigation charts in their shared quarters aboard the merchant vessel Defiant Hope when the emergency klaxons began wailing. She rushed to the bridge to find Captain Morrison staring at sensor readings that made no sense. "Impossible," Morrison muttered, his weathered face pale. "Long-range sensors are detecting massive spatial distortions throughout the entire sector. It's like reality itself is tearing." Elena felt ice in her veins as she studied the readings. She had seen patterns like this before, in the dragon archives that Ash had shared with her during their mental connection. These weren't natural phenomena. They were the signature of something called the Void Hunger, an ancient enemy that the dragons had fought for millions of years. "Captain, we need to contact the nearest Galactic Council fleet." Elena said urgently. This isn't a natural disaster. Something's coming through from somewhere else. But before Morrison could respond, space around them erupted in chaos. Ships materialized from hyperspace, not the elegant dragon vessels Elena recognized, but twisted mockeries of starships that seemed to be constructed from crystallized darkness and broken starlight. They moved with predatory grace, their hulls rippling with energies that hurt to look at directly. All vessels? A transmission crackled through the communication system. This is Admiral Chen of the GCE battleship Redemption. We are detecting massive hostile contacts throughout the sector. All civilian ships are ordered to evacuate immediately. Elena's blood ran cold as she recognized the voice. Dr. Chen's younger sister had risen through the ranks of Galactic Council enforcement to become one of their most respected commanders. If Admiral Chen was here, the situation was far worse than it appeared. Captain, Elena said quietly, those aren't ordinary pirates or raiders. We need to find Ash immediately. They located him in the cargo bay, helping to secure critical supplies as the ship prepared for emergency jump. But when Elena told him about the readings they had detected, his face went white with terror. The Devourers, he whispered. They found a way through the barriers. Elena, you don't understand. These things don't just destroy civilizations, they unmake them. They feed on the fundamental forces that hold reality together. Elena felt her world tilting. But the dragons can stop them, right? That's what they're for, protecting the galaxy from threats like this. Ash's expression was grim. The dragons are powerful, but the Devourers are their equal in many ways. And there's something else. He paused, struggling with concepts that human language couldn't adequately express. The dragons have been growing complacent over the eons. They've forgotten how to fight as a unified force. The ship shuddered as Captain Morrison engaged the hyperspace drive. But instead of the smooth transition Elena expected, they emerged into a maelstrom of conflicting energies. Around them, space itself was fragmenting, creating pockets of twisted physics where the laws of reality operated differently. Hyperdrive is offline, Morrison reported grimly. Whatever's happening out there, it's interfering with our navigation systems. We're trapped in normal space. Elena watched the tactical display as more Devourer ships poured through dimensional rifts. They were moving in perfect coordination, their attack patterns designed to maximize chaos and terror. Worse, everywhere they passed, the fabric of space-time itself was becoming unstable. The Dragon Fleet, Ash said suddenly, pointing to the sensor display. They're here. Elena looked and saw them. Dozens of crystalline ships emerging from hyperspace in formations that reminded her of ancient battle mandalas. But something was wrong. Instead of coordinating their attack, the dragon vessels were operating independently, each house following its own tactical doctrine. Through the ship's communication system, they could hear fragments of the battle as various fleets tried to coordinate their response. Dragon House of Eternal Flame to GCE forces. We require your ships to withdraw from Sector 7 immediately. Admiral Chen to Dragon Command, negative on withdrawal. We have civilian ships in that sector. House of the Singing Void declares this battlefield under draconic authority. Lesser species will not interfere. Elena watched in horror as the forces that should have been working together dissolved into confusion and territorial disputes. The Devourers, meanwhile, continued their methodical advance, using the chaos to establish dimensional beachheads throughout the sector. They're going to lose, Ash said quietly. The dragons are too proud to coordinate with humans, and the humans don't understand the true nature of the threat. The Devourers will use the confusion to establish permanent foothold in this reality. Elena felt desperation building in her chest. There has to be something we can do, some way to get them to work together. Ash looked at her with those opalescent eyes that had been his one unchanged feature. There is one possibility, but it would require me to break the terms of my trial. Elena understood immediately. Ash's dragon abilities were sealed, but the restrictions were voluntary, maintained by his own will and the structure of the trial itself. If he chose to abandon his human experience, he could reclaim his powers and potentially serve as a bridge between the two forces. But if you break the trial, Elena said, the dragons will never accept your choice to live among humans. And if I don't, Ash replied, there may not be any humans left to live among. The decision was interrupted by a direct communication from one of the dragon vessels. The harmonic voice that filled their bridge was one Elena recognized, the great dragon who had presided over Ash's trial. Keth Morphin, The voice resonated through their ship's hull. "We require your immediate presence. The situation has become complex." Elena felt Ash's internal struggle through the fragments of connection that remained between them. The choice he faced was impossible: maintain his human nature and watch both species be destroyed, or abandon his trial and lose forever the chance to bridge the gap between dragons and humans. But as Elena watched the tactical display, she realized there might be a third option. "Ash," she said quietly, "what if you didn't have to choose between being human or dragon? What if you could be both?" His eyes widened as he understood what she was suggesting. It was unprecedented, possibly impossible, but the theory was sound. If a dragon heir could truly understand human nature through limitation, perhaps he could also maintain that understanding while reclaiming his power. "It would be dangerous," Ash warned. "The transformation back to my true nature might destroy the human consciousness I've developed. I could become something entirely new, or nothing at all." Elena looked out at the battle raging around them, at the Devourer ship steadily advancing while dragons and humans fought separately instead of together. "Sometimes," she said, "you have to risk everything to save what matters most." Ash nodded slowly and closed his eyes. Elena felt the air around them begin to vibrate as he reached deep within himself, calling on powers that had been sealed away for 8 months while fighting to maintain the humanity he had learned to cherish. The choice would determine not just his fate, but the future of every thinking being in the galaxy. The transformation began slowly, reality bending around Ash as he fought to reclaim his true nature without losing his human soul. Elena watched in amazement and terror as his form shifted between states of existence, sometimes appearing as the delicate humanoid she had rescued, sometimes as something vast and incomprehensible that her mind could barely process. Light poured from his skin as dimensional barriers cracked and reformed. The cargo bay around them expanded impossibly, becoming a space that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. Through their renewed mental connection, Elena felt Ash's struggle as he tried to merge two incompatible forms of consciousness. "It's working," he gasped, his voice harmonizing with frequencies that shouldn't exist. "I can feel both parts of myself, but they're fighting each other. Human limitation conflicts with dragon transcendence." Elena reached out and took his hand, feeling the energy crackling between them. "Don't fight it. Find the balance. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can be something new." Through their connection, she shared her memories of the past 8 months. The satisfaction of honest work, the joy of friendship, the fierce pride that came from protecting others despite personal cost. But she also shared the dragon memories Ash had shown her, the vast perspective of beings who shepherded entire civilizations, the responsibility of guardianship across cosmic scales. Slowly, impossibly, the two natures began to merge. Ash's form stabilized into something that was neither fully human nor completely dragon, but something unprecedented, a being who understood both limitation and transcendence, who could bridge the gap between species that had never truly communicated as equals. Keth Morphin, the harmonic voice of the great dragon, filled the space around them. "What have you become?" Ash rose, his form now radiating power that made the air itself sing. But Elena could still see humanity in his opalescent eyes. "I am what I chose to become," he replied, his voice carrying both human determination and draconic authority. "I am the proof that consciousness can grow beyond the boundaries that define it." Elena felt herself being transported as Ash extended his hybrid nature to encompass their ship. They materialized aboard the Dragon Command vessel, but the transition was different from before. Elena retained her human perspective while also gaining access to the expanded awareness that dragons took for granted. The Dragon Council was in chaos, their ancient protocols unable to cope with the unprecedented threat of the Devourers. Each house insisted on independent action, their pride preventing the coordination necessary for effective response. Meanwhile, the human fleets fought with courage but insufficient understanding of the true nature of their enemy. "Honored ancestors," Ash addressed the circle of dragons, his hybrid nature allowing him to speak with authority, while maintaining respect for their traditions. "The enemy exploits our separation. They feed on conflict and isolation. Only unity can defeat them." The great dragon's form shifted in what might have been displeasure. "You speak of unity with lesser beings. This goes beyond your original violation of cosmic order. With respect, Elena found herself saying, her voice somehow amplified to reach every consciousness in the chamber. This human has seen your people's true nature, and you've never bothered to see ours. She gestured toward the tactical displays showing the ongoing battle. You call us lesser, but we're the ones still fighting even though we know we're outmatched. You have the power to end this threat, but you're too proud to work with anyone you consider beneath you. Through Ash's hybrid awareness, Elena showed the dragons what she had witnessed during their time among humans. The merchant crews who risked their lives to evacuate civilians, the fleet officers who chose to stand and fight despite being hopelessly outgunned, the ordinary people who found extraordinary courage when faced with extinction. This is what you've never understood, Elena continued. Power without compassion is meaningless. Transcendence without connection is just elaborate isolation. You shaped our evolution, but we've grown into something you never planned for, a species that chooses to stand together even when standing alone would be easier. The dragon of crystallized starlight spoke, its form shimmering with uncertainty. The human speaks of unity. Show us this concept in action. Ash nodded and extended his consciousness outward, encompassing both the dragon fleet and the human vessels struggling against the devourers. For the first time in galactic history, two species shared true communication, not translation or negotiation, but direct understanding of each other's nature and purpose. Elena felt the wonder of dragon consciousness as they experienced human concepts like sacrifice and hope. She also felt human minds expanding as they grasped the cosmic scope of dragon responsibility and the weight of guardianship they had carried for millions of years. Admiral Chen's voice came through, clearly as the mental link established itself. Dragon Command, this is Admiral Chen. I'm receiving tactical data directly from your vessels. How is this possible? Because we're finally talking to each other instead of at each other, Elena replied. Her thoughts transmitted through Ash's hybrid nature to reach both fleets. The change in the battle was immediate and dramatic. Dragon ships began coordinating with human vessels, their reality-manipulating abilities complementing human tactical flexibility and determination. Where dragons provided raw power, humans contributed innovation and adaptability. Where humans showed courage beyond reason, dragons offered the strategic perspective of eons. The devourers, ancient enemies of order and unity, found themselves facing something they had never encountered, two species fighting as one while maintaining their individual strengths. Elena watched through expanded awareness as the tide of battle turned. Devourer ships that had seemed unstoppable began to retreat as coordinated strikes from dragon-human teams closed the dimensional rifts they had been using to enter normal space. Impossible, the great dragon murmured, his ancient consciousness struggling to process what he was witnessing. In all our cycles of existence, we never conceived that unity with lesser consciousness could increase our capabilities. Because we're not lesser, Ash said gently, his hybrid nature allowing him to speak to both species simultaneously. We're different, and sometimes difference is exactly what's needed. The battle ended not with a single decisive blow, but with the systematic closure of every dimensional rift the devourers had created. The enemy retreated to whatever realm they had emerged from, their invasion broken by the unprecedented cooperation between species. In the aftermath, Elena found herself standing before both dragon and human leadership as they tried to understand what had happened. The mental link Ash had created was fading, but the understanding it had fostered remained. The trial period has ended, the great dragon announced formally. Keth Morphin has proven that consciousness can indeed transcend its original boundaries. But in doing so, he has also proven that our understanding of consciousness itself was incomplete. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. Our species have been neighbors for millennia without truly knowing each other. Perhaps it's time that changed. Elena felt Ash's hand slip into hers as they watched the beginning of something unprecedented. The first formal alliance between dragons and humans, born from one being's refusal to accept that understanding and power were mutually exclusive. So what happens now? Elena asked. Ash smiled, his form stable now in its unique hybrid state. Now we explore what the galaxy can become when its people choose cooperation over isolation. We've proven that consciousness can grow beyond any limitations, even the ones we place on ourselves. Elena looked out at the mixed fleet of dragon and human ships, already beginning to coordinate joint patrols and research missions. The future stretched ahead of them, full of challenges and possibilities that neither species could face alone, but together. Guided by the understanding that difference was not inferiority but opportunity, they would explore wonders that transcended anything either species had imagined possible.